Ladies and gentlemen, we are doing yet another tier list. Yeah. First, we're starting off with the Sylvan units, the deer. Now, I'm gonna be considering the artifacts that are specifically meant for these units, so that might bump them up a tiny bit more, but if they have an artifact that's meant for them, I might as well include it, right? The deer has one of the most overpowered artifacts in the game because it lets it, instead of jumping over the first row of walls, it jumps over every single row of wall, which makes it useless to have walls and makes you basically defend with your loaded units every single time. I gotta give it to it. It's basically a champion, honestly. That ability is pretty broken. It's one of the more broken abilities, and with that, let's make it very clear, even without the artifact, it would be very useful. But basically a champion because of the artifact. The unicorn, need I say more? Nah, I think everyone who's used it knows why. The 3 space shield that protects, was it like its health from every shield? I think it was something pretty overpowered. So it's absolutely basically a champion. The druid, okay, here's the thing with the druid. It only makes your death, your imminent death, slower. Even with the artifact, which it makes it take even longer for the hit unit to attack. Mind you, this is a very fast elite unit. It's only 2 turns, but so is the unicorn. And when you compare those two, which one are you taking? I'm gonna be honest, it's kind of slightly shit. It's not horrible. It can definitely, like, be useful because it's so fast. But, slightly shit. Priestess. Again, not the strongest unit. Kind of slow. Was it like 4 or 3 turns which it takes? Not sure. Anyway, healing units in this game tend to be kind of lackluster. Now, it would be kind of mid or slightly shit. But we are including the artifact, and the priestess just so happens to have an artifact which actually turns it into a killable crown of thorns, really. And instead of healing you for, was it like 3 or 2 or whatever per priestess, it instead deals that damage straight to the enemy, which can really help you if your opponent like survives a big hit by like a few points. So with that, very useful, actually kind of a cheap tactic to use. If you use it, shame. The knight. The knight has a shield, kind of like the unicorn, just worse. I mean, it's like half of his health that it protects at all times. So it takes a lot more damage than you'd think to kill a knight. But with the artifact, it is always charged up to full attack power from the very get-go. It's at max attack power, which means the shield is as strong as it can be. It would be kind of mid if it was without the artifact. It is a good defensive unit if you have the artifact. Vampire. I'm not even gonna consider this option. I don't care if you use the 25% more power artifact. This guy, I would rather swallow a full hive of wasps. Alright? I would eat bullet ants for breakfast instead of using this guy. Whenever I use this guy, I lose. Whether that's a skill issue, or this guy is just that bad, I haven't really figured that out yet. But honestly, I'm not trying to find out. I hate it. The ghost. Doesn't have its own artifact, I'm pretty sure. But it is the only unit in this game that can only be hurt by other ghosts. Everything else takes a damage penalty and goes through or doesn't go through, depending on if it has more or less attack than the ghost. Pretty fast unit to attack as well. 3 turns, not the strongest, but considering how defensive it is and it doesn't die, it doesn't get killed by spells, and it protects you from the spells that your opponents could use. So, basically a champion, honestly. Considering it doesn't even have an artifact. It's so good it doesn't need it. In fact, if it had one, it would be too good. Alright, now this is gonna be a bit of a sore spot for me, I feel. Because I want to put this at basically a champion, because it is really good. But unfortunately, I don't know if I can. Because the thing that makes it so good is also the exact same thing that makes it so easy to defend against. The succubus. Honestly, my favorite elite unit in the entire game. Just because it's so dang powerful when you give it the artifact, what's like, again, 25% the horn, or whatever it was. And if you manage to link it and double it, it does so much damage. It can kill basically any actual champion unit, which makes it like, I basically have to put it at champion. But it's definitely under the unicorn. Actually, I might as well, like, I'm gonna have to move these like so, because these two are practically immortal. The other one literally is. And am I gonna have to put the ghost at the very top? I kind of might. It just, because it's immortal. I'm gonna have to. I mean, immortality is a pretty big buff, honestly. The only thing that can kill it is another ghost. But unfortunately, the top two here all completely neuter the succubus. It is good against pretty much everything else but those. So, it's at the bottom of basically a champion. But it's still there, because it can still very well kill a champion, because not only does it attack in segments, but those segments have 3 different zones of splash damage. AKA, it is basically a steroid imp. And you know where the imps were last time, so not really all too surprising now, is it? Nightmares. Yeah, these can be either a nightmare for you or your opponent, depending on how lucky you get, because these things have a skill where they all attack at the same time regardless of their charging turn. Once the first one attacks, all of them attack, regardless of the situation. Now, it would be kinda mid if it didn't have the artifact, which fully charges all your nightmares when they attack. And with that, it is very useful. Could even be above the knight, actually. And then we get perhaps to the unit that I hate the most in the game, because I have been completely destroyed by this current unit so many times. Because it attacks in 3 turns, it has way too much power for that charging time, and not only that, anything it hits, if it doesn't kill, will be unloaded. AKA, your charging unit will become an idle unit, doing nothing. And you have to do the whole charging process over and over again. And the worst thing about the sorcerer is, you get 2 links, 1 behind it, and if it, oh, forbid me if it's an imp. If that happens, there is no amount of wall that will protect against the sorcerer. The sorcerer is so hard to defend against. It's incredible. And I'm gonna have to put it at the very top. Still probably can't put it... Actually, no. I can put it above the ghost because it can uncharge the ghost. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that's the one thing that can actually do something to the ghost. So it's basically a champion because it can completely neuter all your champions. Such an annoying unit. Worst thing is it can actually kill you because it has some decent power. The mage. Again, I gotta say, without the artifact, it's slightly shit. I wouldn't really want to use these guys too often, but because it has the artifact that any color of them can be fused together, honestly, I have to bump it up with the artifact all the way to very useful. But definitely not basically a champion. Kinda actually tempted to put it at slightly mid even then. I'm sorry. And then we have the middiest of slightly mids, slightly shids. Yeah, this guy's nothing special. I mean, it freezes your enemy's troops, and if you can hit it with enough power, it's gonna destroy it. But what I've learned is, most of the time, that doesn't really happen. Mid. Slightly better than the druid, because you can actually destroy your opponent's troops easier. Yeah, kind of mid. Not great. But yeah, that is the completed tier list of all the elite units in Clash of Heroes. And if you disagree, if you agree, tell me in the comments. And I'll see you in the next one.